Hello all and welcome to the channel all about economic board games. Today I am bringing you another top 10 and this is 40 to 31. We're nearly there, guys. We are getting to some of the really high caliber games now, and I'm going to kick off with a stock market game called Speculation, which is one of my absolute faves. This is brought to you by Durkan. It plays 3 to 6 players and it's super quick. It takes about 45 minutes to 60 minutes. Now, in this one, you have this kind of weird zigzag on the board of all these numbers, and you're kind of like, what is going on here? But you've got these little chits, and you're basically trying to invest in those companies, and they've got quirky names that are kind of based off previous board games that Queen Games have brought us and Durkan as well. And you're basically buying and selling these stocks and trying to make the most money. Simple as. But what's clever is as you have this sort of bag with tokens and you reveal, this square token, the circle token, it dictates what you can kind of do. Maybe you can buy, maybe you can sell, or you can do both. Or maybe you have to move one of these tokens so many spots ahead. And that is where it's fun because you get to skip over other companies. And even if they're like really far ahead, you get to skip over it. So then you're in this weird position of, right, which stocks am I backing? Which am I going to buy? Which am I going to sell? Because as they go up, these zigzags in one column, they're worth so much for being first, and gradually being first is the most valuable. But as you play on and others overtake you at the right timing, they can jump from either being like a minus figure where you're actually getting paid to buy that share, and at the end, obviously, they're going to be worth considerably a lot less because you're paying to own those shares rather than get paid for them with your sort of capital welfare. But you might be able to quickly hop over others, and it really determines your players to where these tokens are. And I like how it's not linear in the fact that, yours goes at 5 and yours goes at 3 and you're really far behind and you know where the winner is. This is done on overtaking and hopping other chits. So I really like that element with that sort of spot of luck in the bag here. Really super game. Highly recommend it. All player counts, and it's really low complexity. Next up then, we are going rather heavy. This is a game about the high street and businesses here, and it's called Brick and Mortar. What a super game, this one. And you're basically trying to manipulate the market and undercut your opponents to maximize profits from your stores. And it's really nice to have this sort of game where you can run high street shops. There's a host of stores in here, from jewelry stores to grocery to selling paintings, and you kind of got these probabilities of what sort of cards come out of the demand and the supply, and it's a really mathematical, crunchy game. It's a bit dry, but if you like kind of figuring out the most optimal route to making profits, then this is the game for you. Now, in front of you, you've got this player board where you can put up to like 3 or 4 shops, and the more you do, you can gain some benefits at the end there with sort of reduced costs, and you're able to play more demand and more supply cards. And they're kind of really quirky looking. Maybe you're a grocer and you've got vegetables and fruit you're trying to keep on these shelves. And as you go from round to round, that stock will deteriorate as such. It'll go out off sale. And eventually, if you haven't sold it by the time it gets to the bottom shelf, it will then get wasted, thrown away. So the demand and supply, you've got this interesting balance between the players of how much am I going to put on demand there. These cards you kind of put face down and face up the supply, and that will reveal how many tokens come into play in this sort of inner market here. And then you've got to kind of choose the price that you're willing to pay for these, because your stores need these products and services, and you attain, well, mainly products. You take these and you put them on, but you're competing against other players to get them. And even if you get them onto your store in the capacity and the space provided, you then got to sell them. There's only so many cards you could have played out, and some of them would have been demand, and hopefully one of them or two of them would have been supply, so you can then sell them. But then everyone else is trying to sell their stuff as well. And you're then having this wheel and you're trying to pick what price you're going to go for and how many. And if you commit, say, 3 goods of technology goods and someone else has undercut you by the price, well, they will sell theirs first. And if you don't sell those, you've committed and they all go in, the bin. You've tried to target that market and it's failed. So some really interesting demand and supply aspects here, which are really nice. And I like the quirks. You've got to pay utilities for running your shops as well. And you've got, like, you can, at the end of a round, trade in money for VPs. And the more money you spend, the less, well, you get more VPs, but proportionally slightly less than spending, you know, a little less. So lots to like here. Brick and mortar. I should add, it says 60 to 120 minutes. You're definitely going to be taking 2 to 3 hours on this one. I really don't know how you're going to play this in 60 minutes, but heavier complexity, 2 to 4 players as well. I would probably say 2-3 players is the sweet spot on this one. Right, next we are heading to space in the game Ceres, which is quite a new game, 2023. And in this one, you've got asteroid mining on corporations, well, your corporation's asteroid mining, mining on asteroids, trying to outplay your opponents and rule Ceres. Now, this one's new to me. I played it a couple of times this year and it's so good, it shot up into the top 100. And mainly because the board looks stunning. You've got the theme here of, I think, Earth's gone apart and they've all gone off to the moon, Mars to colonize, and then they are trying to expand on Ceres, which is another moon there. And there's an asteroid belt around there, and you're mining on there to develop as corporations Ceres and build it up, you know, terraform it. Well, not so much terraform it, but just make it with its habitable. So the game has worker placement, but it's like Twist. There's only so many coloured workers out there. You've got to try and attain them to do the certain actions in front of you. You can engine build where you've got, you know, efficiencies over putting actions under actions, or you can have separate actions, and just really unique as to how you maximise those colours. And it's not overly complicated, but you've got, you know, those colours in front of you, maybe green, blue, and you want to trigger them because they give you slightly more benefits than what is available on the board. But equally, they're not massively overpowered. The board is still strong and there's still loads of great areas to go. Maybe you want to get certain resources to then build more corporations and bolt-ons and more businesses there to give you efficiencies and resources. And it is resource heavy. You're trying to attain a load of things, so then you can, you know, get ice and you can, maybe you're mining to get these, because essentially you're trying to get these ships out, little, I can't remember, satellite probes or something, and they go on these asteroids, and the asteroid belt turns, and you need to spend, I think it's ice, to get to certain parts to score, you know, victory points and prove your corporation is the most valuable. And you've got areas where you can go and exchange things, but it's just a lot of nice, it's nicely well done with the sort of timing and the placement of these workers and the actions, and feeling that satisfaction when you have produced loads of things there. And it's uber tight as well. Sometimes you're like, I really need this one more thing to then do that thing to then do that. So there's a little bit of, you know, synergy and one thing turns into another. So loads to like here. 90 to 120 minutes. Again, I think you can probably play it in 2 hours. 1 to 4 players. Never tried solo. 2 players only for me, I think is you know, probably the best. And it's a bit of a table hog. There's a lot of big player boards, a lot of cards, a lot of area needed. So bear that in mind. And it's heavier complexity, but lots to like there. Next up then, Salton Sea. Some have said it's the game of the year. Not quite. There's definitely a few little bits I've pinpointed in my review, you know, in terms of the logistics of where the victory point tracker is. But there were marginal things, you know, which weren't groundbreakingly problematic to the game. But overall, what super production. You know, this is by Devir, and it's a game that plays 1 to 4. Again, I've not tried it solo, but I think it probably would work really well. And it comes in this really small, heavy box. There's loads of content. You think you're in for like a 60-minute game, sort of, you know, not too much to it, but you know, actually it's a really solid game, and there's a lot of nice things about it. And what the whole game is about, and this beautiful sort of cover-up, is mining for, I think it's brine, and you go digging through these rocks, and then you're using this as a kind of resource to go and get this geothermal energy, and there's another one as well, and basically that's really hard to attain with sort of how much money you've got, how much resource you got. It's just a really tight game. Every little decision, every coin, every resource absolutely matters in this game. And essentially you then invest in that in these corporations, and you're getting shares in them, and you're trying to get points that way. And I like how the action choice is really clever here, in the sense of you have money. You're going to need to spend that money. It's challenging in this game. You need money, but it comes in certain denominations. I think it's 1, 3s and 5s. And that same money is used to buy, or on the flip side of the money is action. So you want to kind of use some of those money cards to play actions in front of you, which then give you stronger abilities rather than going to your player board where it's slightly weaker. But then you're getting rid of money to do that, and you want the money to go and turn this, brine into, I think it's brine, into, other resources to get more efficiencies there. So that push and pull of the card play is super, and it's a really standout point for the game for me, this one. Now, overall, 4 players. Again, it's a rather big table hog. I've had fun with 2 and I've had fun with 3. Not really sure I'd want to try 4, mainly because of the playing time. There's a lot of AP, there's a lot of crunchy decisions here, and really wanting to make the most of the board, and people sometimes seem paralysed over what to do best, and I'm struggling to get this, but after a couple of plays, it all comes together nicely. First play was shocking. We all looked at each other like, what has just happened? We didn't have a clue how we were going to get anywhere in it, and it was a real grind. But once you understand the power of the 1s, 3s and the 5s in those monetary cards, and you know what to keep, you know what to spend, you know how to make your engine streamline, not have your machinery break and things like that, then it's a lot more fluid and a lot more fun on the 2nd and 3rd play. So yes, Salton Sea. Next up, we are flying in the skies with a game called Pan Am. What a nice game. What a nice production. Some of it by Funko Games. I think they brought us Big Boss as well. And they've just done a really nice job in it. The production is great. Now, it's 2 to 4 players, 60 minutes, which I think is about right. And in this one, worker placement. You're placing these workers around the board, and it's got one of those timing elements where, not timing, but a certain player order, where action order. And you kind of want to do certain things in the right time, because attaining this thing then allows you to do this other thing. And you got this map of the world, which kind of looks very strange, but it's actually probably a better representation of how the globe looks. And Pan Am, back in the day, obviously was a dominant force and took over many other airlines in the industry and took over those paths. And you kind of got Pan Am, which are expanding throughout the game. There's a dice roll, and then it tells you which path it goes on. They've got these kind of cool little designs on them. And you're trying to second guess where you want to go, because you want to get gobbled up to an extent, because you're purchasing these air routes, and you've got airports that can go on, you've got these cards to attain these routes, and you're taking charge of these really little cool sort of aeroplanes in different sizes, and they can dictate the bigger jumbo jets can take a bigger route as such. And you want to try and get gobbled up by Pan Am, because you're getting paid out for that, and you want the money because then you want to buy shares in Pan Am. So your whole aim is to get shares in Pan Am to have the most value, and the earlier you buy these shares, the cheaper they are, and obviously throughout the game they get more expensive. But the way you've got these different options to, go and try and compete for one of these location cards, and you can auction them. So, one player puts it down, and then another player can come along and outbid them. So then you get your token back, and then you're like, right, where do I go with my token? Do I outbid them again? So I like that outbidding of opponents. It's really nice. And that's pretty much most of the spots. You want to get this plane? Well, you're going to have to pay for it. But then if you get your token back and there's a spot that's 0 value, you just go there and pay nothing. So this back and forwards of how much you're going to spend, what do you really want at the right time, is just great. And the whole game just really comes together nicely. And as I say, to play something that meaty, that crunchy, that enjoyable in about 60 to 90 minutes, excellent. Really enjoy it. Okay. Moving on to a very heavy game, Nucleum, guys. So this one, you're becoming the leader of an industrial revolution in an alternative timeline. It's all about this neon green resource. Now, I've mentioned this in one of my reviews. At first, the game was very garish. I was very put off by it, and I was, loving Brass Birmingham at the time, and it's got a lot of similarities to Brass Birmingham, Lancashire, and Barrage, things like that. And this one is a very, very good game, folks. But there's a big learning curve. You're going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out all these connections and how this resource gets there, and discounts, and you've got your player board of a host of things you can do. But once you put the time into it, it's a heavy complexity game. It's going to take you sort of 3 hours plus, I'd say, easy. It's well worth it, guys. 5, 6 plays in. Hopefully by then you've kind of got accustomed to what everything does. Now, it does play solo. I commented in my video, tried it, and it just really wasn't for me. Too much sort of upkeep and trying to focus on your opponent and what they're going to be doing, and I couldn't really concentrate on my game. Plays up to 4. I don't really think I'd want to play this 4 players. It's sort of 2 and 3 player for me, sweet spot. And it's a weight of 4.19 on the Geeks. That shows you what you're in for here. But for me, had a lot of fun with the base game. I then added on the Australia expansion, which changed the game for me. It really opened up the balance of the board, where to go, what to do. So really recommend that expansion. I've yet to try the latest one, Politico. I can't remember what it's called now, but haven't tried that one. But lots to like here. But just bear in mind, you're in for a big sprawling game, this one. Lots going on, lots of things to keep on track of, but well worth getting into. And next, we have another stock market game. This is called Bear Raid. Now, this one came out 2022. It's 3 to 6 players. Shame it's got that sort of 3-player mark. I usually like to have a 2-player option, but it absolutely needs it in this game because there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of things, moving pieces, and you need your opponents to be keeping an eye on you and challenging you. Now, what I like about this game, and it's a typical stock market game, you're trying to influence it and make the most money. But what this game achieves is probably the most similar game to actually investing in stocks that I've come across. It replicates shorting. Now, I've not done much shorting in real life. I do like to trade in stocks and shares, but I understand what shorting is, and this does it to a T. And shorting, for those who aren't aware, it's kind of the opposite of buying shares. You're selling shares basically at a high price, and you're getting the money there and then you're hoping to buy the shares later on at a cheap price to give those shares back, and you made a profit. But you're hoping that the shares go down in value, which is a really nice touch. And I've come across that in other games, but it's never done it quite like this. And for me, this game, it achieves this notion of when a stock goes to its maximum price, it splits the share, and which is great. I've seen that in other games. I actually can't remember which game it was now, but there's another stock market game that does that one. And in essence, your 10 shares become 20 shares, which is fine. But if you have shorted a stock and you owe, say, 5 shares, and that stock has been pushed by other players to the max, and then those 5 shares become 10 shares that you owe, you can be in financial difficulty in this game, which is fascinating. I absolutely got stung on one of my plays, but it was great to see the limits of a game being pushed, and this did that. I was so far in negative, owing all this money back, that it was a pleasure to watch a game break me. And I actually came out, quite happy from that a game can push those elements. So I'd be very mindful on the future play, obviously not to go too heavy into shorting, but trialing it. And obviously my opponents in this case were brutal. They saw that I'd gone heavy on shorting, and they made sure that stock price kept high. But overall, lots to like in this. And in terms of what you're actually doing, there's loads of companies, and you're trying to, obviously buy shares, and there's event cards that change the state of play. You've got these dice you can move around and impact how the price will change on those. And then you've got kind of clever play over, do you keep some of the dice? Do you try and put dice in this other thing? Because the quantities of the dice, there's a bit of luck there. You roll the dice, and the quantities, so the more dice, the better. The higher the outcome, it dictates sort of where the price margin is. And you're kind of keeping secret behind you the stocks you own, the shorted ones, and the dice and the money as well. So lots to like here. Next, then, we have another game all about airlines. And this is called Airlines Europe. Super game in. You can probably recognise the designer, Alan R. Moon. He's brought his Ticket to Ride, Union Pacific. Now, this one has very... a few similarities to something like Ticket to Ride, with the connections and the trying to get to certain locations and meet requirements. But this steps it up a notch, guys. This, if you like that type of game, but you want something with investment, with stocks and buying shares, but then this probability and luck aspect of the deck, this is the game for you. Now, it's a beautiful production with these little aeroplanes, and 2 to 5 players, 75 minutes, which is about right, and it's low complexity. Now, the whole focus of the game is expanding your airlines across Europe to make your investments pay off. Now, it's very streamlined with how many actions there are. It's like 3 or 4 actions. Do you buy shares in, I think it's Airbus, which is kind of this other company, and gradually, if you get majority in that, you'll get loads of points. Are you gonna, I can't remember, dividends or something like that, where you get paid out based on how many cards you got in your hand or portfolio. You can buy the shares, you can put these down into your portfolio, so you've got them in your hand, and as soon as they actually go into your portfolio, you've got majorities of these shares, and the value you bought, oh, that was the other one, buying routes. So as you buy routes, that makes that type of company more valuable. And then you're trying to get the value of the company into these different areas, which gives you more points at the end of the game. And having majorities in those sectors, or if you're first, will give you the most points, second, a number of points as well. So you kind of got this interesting balance of which airlines am I going for? How am I going to influence the strength for them by going to certain routes on the board? If you get from A to B with certain colours, orange here and there, there's additional benefits for doing that. So lots to like here, and a really, nice dynamic of the deck as well, because there's these, I can't remember what they're called now, but the sort of trigger cards that come out in certain parts of the deck. And those will trigger sort of when scoring occurs, and you're there tempted to go, right, do I do this action now to get these cards in my portfolio? Because I feel like there's going to be a scoring element. And that's how you're going to get a lot of points through like 3 of these scoring aspects. So lots to like. A little bit of setup with creating that deck, which a few people have niggled about, but it doesn't take too long. But yeah, solid game, this one. Next up, what a beast of a game this one is. And it's called St. Petersburg. Now, this is the 2nd edition. Not played the first one. I was a bit, it's hard to find, to be fair. A bit put off by the artwork. Really enjoy this edition, which is very similar to the first one. Now, I like to bolt on the expansion, which I can't remember what it's called, but it's kind of got farm animals and apples and fish and things like that. And it just adds a little bit more to the game to think about with extra cards and timing aspects. But in this game, you're hiring workers and influence in aristocrats to build prestigious buildings. So it's 2 to 5 players, works really well with 2. I've only ever really played with 2, 3, maybe the odd 4-player game, but for 2 players and 3 players, super. It's low complexity, 60 minutes. You can easily play this in 60 minutes, but you can have fun as well by pushing your engine and playing a little bit longer. But in essence, you've got this board and you're trying to attain, as it says, aristocrats. Cards, blue cards can give you victory points. You got yellow cards in the expansion, which give you these like chickens and apples. And you're going up, in the yellow cards, you're going up this little market thing and competing to get victory points from round to round, who has the majority. But with these other cards, for example, the green ones, you've got like fur coat trappers and people who are cutting wood down, choppers and things like this. And as you purchase them, you put them on your tableau, they're going to give you income at the end of that particular colour phase. And that income you want to then invest in the next lot of cards. But as these cards sort of accumulate on the board, if people aren't buying them, there's no spaces. So when you get to the next phase, there's no spaces for those cards to come out. So you're stuck with the same sort of cards. And at the end of the round, these cards all sort of come down and they get a -1, reduction on them. And then new cards can get filtered into the top there as you play out through the next round. And then you're like, right, I really want this card in, it's -1. And certain card combos give you reductions. If you have like 3 of these fur trappers, you get like free discount on the next one. And you're trying to balance as to where you source your income and where you're going to get these victory points, because that's the name of the game, getting all these victory points. If you go for the blue cards, maybe you're not getting so much income, but then you get loads of victory points. Or if you go for the income, you can accumulatively build that and buy more blue cards later on to get more victory points. And then these aristocrats, you can collect those to get loads of points. So it's a lot of mechanics that are really familiar, but it just does it so well. And it's such a really nice package. On first impressions, probably for most looking at the cover, you're like, this looks a little bit dated, a little bit drab, but don't be fooled. There's a really solid gameplay under this cover and lots to like. So there we are, St. Petersburg. And last up then, we have gone heavy again. We've gone shipping and it's a Panamax. Whew, this is a good game, folks. And Panamax is one of those games that it's hard to find. It can be quite pricey. It's out of print occasionally, or most of the time. But if you can get a copy, you can learn it and dedicate the time to this. Actually get a play or 2 under your belt. It's so much fun. And it is a steep learning curve. It's similar to Nucleum, where you have to commit and it's heavier complexity. And in essence, you're running a freight company, shall we say. It's all based around the Panamax Canal, so there's a lot of theme there, and certain size ships are going from one side of the east coast of America to the west, and you're trying to deliver goods. Now, it does it in a similar way to Grand Austria Hotel, where the dice selection dictates, the power and the strength of the action and what you want to choose to do. You're going to load this onto one of the ships and keep it in cargo. Are you then using that action to move things and go through certain areas of the board? Because you've got locks you have to go through and use certain ones to get through the locks. And then you've got just basic movement. Which ships you're going to move? You know, you've got these military ones that can give you bonuses, and you've got a player board in front of you with various bonuses you're trying to tick off to get extra strength. Are you going to put your dice and your cargo on, and the accumulative numbers of the dice impacts, you know, where they can go as well? Are you going to put them on other people's ships? Because you want your ships to be utilised, and you get benefits from that. You get these like captain cards and engineer cards and things. You can invest in other people's companies, your company. So it's very flux and flow, and it's just a pleasure moving these ships. And sometimes a ship's caught in one of these holding areas, but then another ship bumps it along. So you've got the advantage of being moved for free when it wasn't even your go. So you really tactically playing the board as to when things can get moved, how you get this cargo for the most profit, increase share value. So it really does feel like you're running this freight company, and just the board and the color scheme and the whole package just really comes together nicely. But yeah, heavier complexity. 2 to 4. I think this would it does work really well with 3 and 4s. 2 is fine, but I do think 3 and 4 player especially is where this game out, because it just brings a bit more with the shares and the purchasing them, and just more movement on the board. And most heavy games, I typically go for 2-3 players, but this one, I do think it's worth going for the 4 players. It adds a bit of length. You know, it says 90 to 120 minutes. You're looking at 2.5, sometimes 3 hours with 4 players. But yes, it's just a beautiful experience that all comes together nicely. There we are, guys, another 10 cracking games, and we'll be moving on to the next lot soon. Thank you all for watching. See you all soon.